Hello and welcome to Stretty News TV. We're back with a Stretty Monday. Usually Stretty Sundays, but you know ourselves, we're not consistent in that account. Hopefully things will pick up. United, the weekend, opened the Premier League season with a 2-1 defeat to Swansea at home. Bit of a kick in the bollocks, shall I say. First game back at home, and we need a bit of a boost after the terrible home record last season, but just things didn't go our way. Lots of players injured, but we'll get to that. Johnny, what did you make of, say, the new setup? We're playing 4 at the back anymore. We started with a 3-5-2 formation. Do you think the players will adapt to that? And you think that maybe the reason they didn't on Saturday was down to the injuries, with 9 injuries, so it was difficult for a new manager to come in, doesn't know all the players too well just yet, and he was expected to make way for some youngsters.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, obviously the injuries won't help, but I don't know. Obviously, we had the really promising pre-season, didn't we? And I mean, if you look at the actual team that played on Saturday, obviously he lined up with Young again at left wing back. That was similar to pre-season. The 3 centre backs similar to pre-season. So there's only really Lingard playing right wing back that was really different. So I don't really think you can say that the injuries played into it on Saturday. I just think they're getting used to playing in the formation, and it's going to take may require months. I mean, obviously, there's always a massive difference between the intensity of playing friendlies and playing in actual competitive football. So it probably will require months. I mean, traditionally, I'm 31 now, but historically, I can only ever really remember United playing 4-4-2. I know Fergie experimented a little bit with 4-5-1 towards his latter years in Europe specifically. But, I mean, even for United fans, let alone the players, it's kind of bizarre watching a 3 or a 5-3-2 or however you want to phrase it, formation. But, if he persists with it, I know he altered it in the second half, which was promising, Van Gaal. Unlike Moyes last year, he actually attempted to tweak things in the second half and change it. But it's going to require months. We've got to be patient.
Well, yeah, everything. Every time you adjust to something drastically different, it will take time. It's just the one thing I've always considered. Obviously, we're attempting to play much better in football than we have. For me, I think the 3-5-2 formation is definitely not ideal, and I think if Van Gaal had the players that he wants, he'll be able to adapt to a 4-3-3. I think that's what we're going to be going for in the future. Like, if you look back at the 3-5-2 formations, tell me which team has won the League One and which team has won in Europe with that formation, playing that with 3 at the back. It's not easy, because you're obviously you're putting emphasis on a midfield. We haven't got a great midfield, but now, even though we've been years with a poor midfield, we're really struggling defensively. We need signings, and we'll get onto that when we talk about the Glazers. That we drastically need signings, and they're not 2 weeks after the transfer market. Now, if we were running through the summer, we would all have said we knew we needed signings. United finished 7th last season. All the teams above us have bought and improved. Liverpool have bought. Well, they haven't improved. They lost their best player, and they spent over 100 million on. It remains to be seen, but looks a bit like Spurs last year. Ian, what did you make of, say, in the second half when we were 1-0 down? He was very quick to throw 4 at the back, and then you started seeing tactical malfunction, because this passing game and pressing game we played on tour, it resulted to looping balls up to the big microphone, Marouane Fellaini.
Yeah, I sort of was a bit disheartened when we started doing that. And I think the majority of Old Trafford was completely disheartened when we started doing that. He did pay off to some sort of respects to knock it down, but unfortunately, he does have some sort of sense to put it in the sort of spaces. He played one in behind Rooney when Rooney was going crossing, so it should have been really played in the opposite direction. It's all of a sudden you just went, now we've gone back to playing long ball tactics, and it's near enough watching Sunday League football. The chap a couple of seats down for me, who I'm going to get probably quite friendly with over the next few months is what's we call it. It literally said at half time that Louis van Gaal's complete philosophy went out the window in 45 minutes. It took him 45 minutes to go complete. I don't think that's going to happen. He did go to 4 at the back, which did slightly help us defensively, but it did sort of hinder us going forwards then. But that thing is with the 3-5-2 system is that your 2 wing backs have got to be trying to get in behind. When you to the usual wingers in a 4-4-2 system, they can get down and around, and that did hurt them. Januzaj, when he came on, especially on the right hand side, was really having a go at their fullback, and eventually he got booked. And then United scored the equaliser, and a lot of United fans, a couple of including myself, didn't actually realise, but their number 3 did get substituted at that point in time. So Swansea were quite, adjacent to what was going to go on and what United were going to start when we'd ended up eventually 4-4-2. So they knew that United were going to start bombing down attackers, but it was a bit too little, too late. If you sort of ask me, you've got to try and get in front and control the game from the start at Old Trafford. You've got to try and make that fortress back to what it used to be. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. United were just too slow at getting in behind, creating anything. Rooney, I've said it in both games. I've said it in so many different people that I spoke to. In both halves, he gave at least 5 or 6 passes away in each half where they were too short. He received them into his feet, and then didn't play them in the right direction. Played them too short, and you just if he's not up to it, and he was clearly up for it because he went and had a right go at Tyler Blackett for letting in the second goal, which I don't think Blackett was entirely to blame because I think he went straight over Young's head, who just didn't bother to jump. That's another question altogether as to Ashley Young's plumbing performance, because I really did fear this after him having such a good pre-season. I did fear that he'd come back to the Premier League and the pace of the Premier League would completely outshot him, and it did.
Yeah,
I don't know what the original question was, but that's my views there, pal.
Obviously, given the defeat at Old Trafford, just looking on the bright side and coming off a very successful pre-season tour, I think straight away it nips the bud in kind of telling people, hold on, Louis van Gaal is not a fucking miracle worker. It's going to take time. And if you look at David Moyes, and you can argue he didn't get time. Well, he hadn't got a philosophy. And he said himself with the interview with the Daily Mail that he would have done things differently. I hope so. I hope he can see that now. But Van Gaal should get time. He's coming in. He's on the back of massive experience at the top. He wants to play the proper way. He's willing to change and give youth a go. And I just think that he's the type of manager that I'd be more than willing to give a lot of time to, because I can see United over time improving, and that's why you give managers time for, if you can see improvement down the line. With David Moyes, I don't think anyone really saw much of an improvement down the line. With Van Gaal, we can, and hopefully the club give him that time, because he's a manager that definitely deserves it. But just before we move on to, I suppose,
Dale?
Yeah?
In the article, did Moyes give any indication as to how he would have done things differently, or is he keeping that under wraps for his next club?
Oh, he's keeping that under wraps before he takes Barcelona to treble beyond trebles. But no, before we get on to the main topic of tonight's show, the whole Glazer out situation that we seen on Twitter last night, it's just a question for John. Last season, I think, as Moyes' reign progressed, whether we played Stoke, Burnley, not Burnley, but Stoke, Sunderland, you name it, especially Old Trafford, you could never be too confident, because teams were coming to Old Trafford and we were having a real go, a genuine go, because points are up for grabs. Old Trafford was no longer a fortress. Do you see that remain at the club this season? And if it does, I personally, it's only a matter of time before Louis van Gaal changes that. But do you see that being nipped this season, or how do you think Old Trafford will return the way it always was, or will it take a season or two?
I don't think Van Gaal is the sort of manager who would permit it to last that long. He's just, as we all know, he's just. I don't think he'll tolerate. You could see he was completely unimpressed after Saturday. I don't think he'll tolerate it. I think he will put pressure on Woodward to make the signings. I think he's come to the club on the proviso and on the premise that signings would be made.
Hold on. Woodward, signings in the same sentence.
Yeah, I know it's a bit of an oxymoron on that one. I know it's not. I know he doesn't think it's in his remit to go and sign players, but it is. So I don't know. I mean, I generally defer to Ian on matters of the Glazers, obviously, because he's got a more intricate knowledge than I do on these matters, and it is a very complex situation. Obviously, we all abhor the Glazers. None of us like them, even if they turned it round financially. We'd all rather see the back of them. But it's one of those situations. It's just inevitable. You mentioned the Glazers there. It's inevitable that frustrations will come to the fore during periods of adversity for the club. So obviously last season with Moyes, it compounds the situation. But there's always going to be that underlying current of dislike and distaste for the Glazers. Just comes to the fore during these periods of adversity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That brings us on to the next topic. Obviously, last night there was a Twitter meltdown. Hashtag Glazer out was trending. A number of attempts from some Twitter accounts. I think my problem with this evening, I'm sure you have your thoughts too, is there's a number of great groups out there. Must for me being standout, and Stretty News have always supported Must. But there are some campaigns in the past that have come when United had maybe a run of defeats and things weren't going so smoothly. And now as an example with no signings and a Glazer out. But for me, it should always be Glazer out, whether we win or not. At the end of the day, you can see the net spend on transfers. I think it's been a total of 6 million since they come in, or something really low like that. And then compare that to people even like Everton or Spurs or City, Chelsea. They spend the money they're getting, and Manchester are making such a fortune of sponsors, of tickets, and so on. Sorry, that's the washing machine in the background. He's trying to interrupt me. But you see these clubs, they're going out spending, and United fans are paying fortunes every season to watch the club club play. Then you see in the summer all these signings of sponsors. Why isn't that money going towards signings? And it is pissing people off, but it's always been the way. So this shouldn't really be a wake-up call for United fans this summer. It's always been that way. It always has been. And if it wasn't for the Glazers and it was some football people that have money, United would be in a better shape right now. Thoughts on, say, campaigns that kind of kickstart and they only kind of last when things are going bad, poorly?
Yeah, it's an unfortunate sort of situation that people do, but I don't think a lot of people realise that if we come back to 2010 and when Green and Gold first kicked off, there was a major umph, and there was something of news, the way the Glazers, the whole sort of industry of how the Glazers were going about at United came to the forefront. And a lot of people were angry at me. That was a major wake-up call. A lot of people then didn't realise that just because you could get the Green and Gold scarf out and do some protests, was at the end of it you needed a solution. You needed to find a way to oust the Glazers, and it wasn't there in 2010. It's still not there today. In a respect, the Glazers have got a value of the club that they would sell for, and I currently believe that they will eventually sell, which is what they're currently doing now. They're testing the water of how much value they can get out of the club, which is why the 20% of the club that's already been floated has done so. But this doesn't mean that they can find a buyer to it. If we go back to 2010, the Red Knights, and the Red Knights were people that were about to buy the club. And the thing is with those is they wanted a value for the club that they felt was genuine. And the club ever since has been overvalued by Forbes and the financial industry, and it doesn't help. And the Glazers did this perfectly with Van Gaal's appointment. Was it Van Gaal's appointment, and then the Adidas deal absolutely rocketed the sky. The price of the share price of the club $2 more than what you're thinking. They went, right, we're going to sell an extra thingies because we can keep a high share price on that. And what they did, because eventually the club was on the stock exchange at $14. So they're actually making money. And the only thing that really I didn't understand was this time that they sold the shares that they're allowed to sell. This is something that I don't think United fans don't realise is when the Glazers bought the club with the debt pays for the shares that they had. They've not bought those shares, but they're allowed to sell those shares in that respect because they're part of the club. And this 10% that's just been sold actually goes straight into their back pockets. It makes them 100 odd million. If you bought this with debt that you've not paid that debt off with, and now you're selling shares in something that you don't actually own, then why the hell should you be at a profit from that? And I really don't understand why people don't seem to get that this wasn't a problem just from the start. It was a problem throughout, and it continues to be a problem for United fans. I think the only sort of light at the end of the tunnel is the fact that the Glazers now don't own 20% of the club. And until that day that we actually go, because of the way that the shares are divided with, what's the word? The way that they can be controlled and have an input on what goes on at United, because the way the Glazers set up the shares, it would actually take for us to actually get down to the Glazers' personal shares that they got off their father when he died a few months back, for United to actually be in a position where we could actually oust them. But till that position comes along will be when the value that people that want to buy the club, who are sat in the background, who still want to buy the club, comes to the same level as what the owners do, and then that's going to be a far long off shot.
It was just a question sent in from Twitter. It's kind of it's not really a question we can answer. It's a question we can sort of speculate. How big of a bid would it take the Glazers to sell? And just before I go to Jonathan, and Ian, you can ever talk this as well. I think every investor that wants to buy the football club, and I'm sure there's a few out there, each and every one of them have their own valuation. The Glazers obviously have their own. They want the debts cleared, and also right now it's more difficult with the Adidas situation. They're making so much money off that. So investors did want to come in, I would think. The Glazers will want to make sure that they secure the money they're going to get off Adidas in the coming years. The money they cleared their own debt, and obviously to make a profit out of the club. That's maybe just common knowledge of it all. John, what would you think? Ian has kind of commented on how they're kind of testing the water, say, with the kind of share and the IPO and different things. What do you think it would take? Do you think the fans could do something about it? I don't think anyone really knows. I don't. Unfortunately, Twitter hashtags won't fix it.
No, that's true. I doubt the Glazers are on Twitter, are they? Unless they own some of it, unless they've funded it with some debt somewhere along the line. I don't know. I mean, as I said, like, it is an intricate topic, and I don't profess to be an expert in it. Really, I suppose I've kind of adopted a more of an ignorance is bliss sort of policy towards it, because it used to pain me a lot, the whole Glazer situation. So I kind of try to ignore it now, but it always rears its ugly head. But no, I mean, Ian knows these things best, and I'm pretty sure, I don't want to misquote Duncan Drasdo, but I'm pretty sure he said around the 1.2 billion, maybe even up to 1.5 billion is what they'd sell at. Well, like you say, in terms of the solution, I sympathise a lot.
Piggy bank, Johnny.
Say again?
I said take out the piggy bank.
Yeah. What was I going to say? No, I empathise a lot with Ian and Must and everyone and their plight, because people, like you always see on Twitter, very quick to criticise them for not being proactive enough. But really, it's very difficult. You get these sporadic campaigns, periodically, like the green and gold. But then last night I saw someone saying, let's all sit in the stadium for 2 hours after the game. But that's going to achieve absolutely nothing. In fact, if anything, the Glazers will just view that as an extra 2 hours to make money off us by selling pies at the kiosk.
You've still paid for your match ticket and your memorabilia and your pies and so on. So sitting in there the next half an hour is not going to get the Glazers more money. It's going to get the Stewards. They're going to be happy to have you an extra overtime shift.
No, exactly. But also the Glazers will keep the kiosks open. They'll put on a greater range of ales and beers so that everyone spends at the kiosk. It's just, for me, that was a bit of a. It wasn't an idea that would work. As we were discussing today, lads, the only ideas that will genuinely work, I feel, are ones that significantly dent the Glazers' coffers. But even then, I mean, the people were saying, why don't we just turn up and campaign outside the stadium and not go inside the stadium? Well, the majority of season tickets have already been sold for this season. So that's a little bit futile, really, because they've already got the money off us. So it's a really precarious situation, and it's a difficult one. It's a very difficult one to come up with a solution.
Do the Glazers take refunds?
Did the Glazers?
Yeah. Ian, just on that, KBMUFC on Twitter asked, what is the actual problem at Manchester United? Is it Ed Woodward? Is it the Glazer solely, or is it more? Is it this kind of topic? We're kind of just talk about the Glazers, and the problem did stem from 2005 when the takeover came in, and ever since we've just seen a development of corrupt ownership. I don't know, the debt has come down, lots of sponsors come in, but it's corrupt. When you look at how much money they're leeching out of the club, the lack of a net spend considering the amount of sponsorships and the amount of money spent on interest and bonds and so on.
Yeah, I think that's a key point. Is there is a major point in the fact that you have got, and has been since 2005, a huge debt burden on, and it's only recently, the last couple of seasons, that United's debt is down to a manageable level. In actual fact, it's probably lower than Arsenal's, I think, now, and possibly even a lot blooming better off than Chelsea's, considering their blooming owner. But the thing is with United's owners is that they now see this as a point where they've got to try and maximise the value of United before they sell. This Adidas deal basically is like a pinnacle of how far they can do for 10 years. Now, did the Glazers sit around for 10 years and wait till they can negotiate a bigger sponsorship deal? But in that 10 years, that they've got to then be able to keep money rolling into the club. The TV deal, as many know, has become huge now that BT Sport have joined Sky in the arena of the Premier League for UK broadcasting, and that just went rocketing through the sky. And United have got so much for that. Even if they were finishing 7th last season, I think people sort of quoted that United will lose around about 30 million for not being in the Champions League this season, but you'd have to take a couple of years of not being in the Champions League, and I don't know, Louis van Gaal walking out, Rooney walking out, and us to be sat in 10th or below for 4 seasons before you actually seriously start questioning the value of Manchester United. The brand is so big, and a lot of people have questioned Woodward, this sort of Twitter sort of thing that last night I watched completely throughout. I made a few comments, but here and there you sort of think, is it worth commenting apart from shouting Glazer out? Well, I've been doing that since prior to 2005 and prior to the takeover. And it continuously will be shouted. But when you've got a solution in place, and then that's the key to time to shout at it. And unfortunately, it's either going to have to come to a point where the valuation that the Glazers want to sell at comes close to those that want to buy it, and those that want to buy it have got the same passion and attributes to running United how United should be run, where the money that we did have prior to 2005 was actually reinvested, even in the PLC years when Sky were trying to buy United back in 97, 98. Those were the sort of times where United actually still were throwing money in decent players. The 99 didn't come about because United didn't have the top players in the world. It's because we did have some of the best players on the planet at the time. York were bought in reasonably cheap as well at the time. United, if I think there was a quote somewhere today, if United have spent what they have done in the past 12 months a bit more wisely, quite a couple of seasons ago, they'd have had Bale, Cruz, and God knows how many others, and you went, hang on a minute.
Gary Neville said, I think.
But that was it Gary Neville's quote? I thought I'd seen something off someone quite high. And you think, hang on a minute, that is a really good point, because United haven't been investing that money that they have got, that they did have, because it went into it went straight into the bank accounts of these people that had bonds and invested in United that basically held up the Glazers' debts. Like I've said, we've got down to a level where United's debts don't really, could be chipped away at now for years on, ever, apart from a couple that will fluctuate in 2017. But that's a case where you've got to look at it again and go, that's not really doing with the amount of revenue that's coming into the club now. TV deal, Adidas deal, Chevrolet deal. These are all big major money that's piling into the club. It now needs to be reinvested, and I don't for 1 minute expect that it won't be reinvested in the club. It just seems to be that before Twitter's meltdown last night, a few were actually going after Ed Woodward for not doing it. Can go back to 2005 when Woodward joined the club. He was joined the club as one of the Glazers' men in the front door. He organised the Glazers to be at United, and they gave him a role because of his potential and what he could do in bringing sponsorship and money to the club, and that was his primary role. He was never supposed to be a chief executive. He was never supposed to be there to do these deals financially. My first thoughts with the Glazers would, if they'd have been really, really canny when Ferguson stepped down at the end of not last season, the season before, that they would have given him the football director of football role, and he would have then been, spent maybe a few months of the summer and the January period going out and attracting those players that we now need to reinvest in the squad. It hasn't been reinvested since like 2009, and I think that would have been a far more solutionable idea. He could have put Woodward in the CEO role, but he wouldn't have had half of the slack that he's got. But he's not the right man to be doing transfer deals. He is when it comes to putting yourself a bucket sponsorship together or noodles from China, but he's not for going and dealing with other football clubs. It's not his foray, shall we say.
Ian, how much is the Mr. Potato sponsorship worth to us? Our official...
Unfortunately, there's numbers on this piece of paper that I've just picked up that are still not going to add up to what they are. So,
to answer the question and go on evidence, how much is it worth to us as fans? It's worth fuck all by the looks of it. The money's going nowhere into the Glazers' pockets. Ask them how much is it worth them. But just before we wrap it up, and speaking about Woodward, John, there's around 2 weeks left at the transfer market. Realistically, what can you see getting done? I know it's a bit of a joke here with Woodward. He's had so much time, but realistically, what can you see being done in the next around 2 weeks?
I had a blue pal of mine texted me today, and he was inquiring what's going on in the transfer window, and my response was that I know as much as Woodward, i.e. nothing, which is a bit disconcerting, really. No, I don't know. I mean, this year is rapidly turning into it's going to be entitled the fight for fourth, I think, because I think any Reds that were thinking that this is going to be a comfortable top four, certainly on the basis of Saturdays, it seems a bit delusional, really. I don't think we can say top four's a guarantee by any stretch of the imagination. I think we need to sign 2 established players, a centre-back and a central midfielder, if we even have aspirations of vying to get in the top 4. Otherwise, I think you can probably kiss it goodbye. We'll probably finish 5th. We definitely need a centre-back and we definitely need a centre midfielder, and both need to be established players that are resolute and that can influence the side. I mean, obviously, we all know the names. The Hummels, the Vidals. But they've got to be players of that ilk. It's got to be Benatia or Hummels.
Yeah, well, you see, looking at it right now, there's reports that Mojo Jojo is almost done.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've just seen Ian Liederman's just tweeted, a note of encouragement for my United fans is that Rojo deal seems all but certain to happen now. After that was sort of being confirmed by the Twitter IK knows you fans this afternoon.
Wow. I mean, how good is he?
How good is apart from the left back performances that he played for Argentina during the World Cup, I've not seen too much of him. But what's it, Squawker, who do the stats, seems to have him rated higher than Hummels and a couple of others. You're like, what? I think
is he going to be as influential as a Hummels or a Benassia? Because we need one of those kind of two in the middle.
Look, let's ask the audience, those who play FIFA, you know more than anyone. Let us know how good Mojo
play FIFA.
or Football Manager, or watch YouTube clips.
Jesus.
More than Football Scouts than Martin Ferguson or anyone.
I thought that was just David Moyes' way of doing football management was on with Football Manager.
Well, you can ask, where on earth did Ferguson find Bebe other than this beautiful network of YouTube?
No, but
go on.
Go on, lads. No, I was going to say, I mean, as you both know, I'm a bit miserable when it comes to transfer speculation. I'm a bit kind of monk-like. I don't allow myself to get giddy until that scarf's being held aloft on the Old Trafford pitch. But
like Serge.
No, you know, I'm like, if anyone follows me on Twitter or anything, you'll know I'm the furthest from being an ITK account that you'll ever know. In fact, my ITK stands for ignorant to knowledge. I quite openly admit that I know nothing when it comes to who we're getting in the transfer window. But all I know is that we do need a centre back and central midfielder desperately if we want to get in the top four.
And a new chief executive, and new owners. That's it for the show.
Is that Christmas shopping list? The aim of December 25th. We'll have a new centre back, a new centre midfielder, a decent winger, a new CEO because he's crap at doing his job, and new owners because they've been absolutely appalling.
Yeah, look, fingers
crossed. I think a United fan would disagree with that for God knows how many years.
No way.
We can't end on it being a miserable Mank Mondays now. We
can't. So what we need, realistically.
Go on.
Realistically.
Yeah.
Just so we can end on a more kind of positive. Hopefully it's positive. Hope your answers are positive.
Yeah.
Predictions for Sunderland this weekend. Ian, go for
it. Where to start with this?
Stadium of Light. Stadium of Light.
I know where we're playing. I know where we're playing. It's just a bit hard to, it's getting even harder to predict than when Moyes was in charge. At least we could sort of predict that we weren't going to win at one point. No, I'm going to be positive. I'm going to go that we're going to win 2-0.
Quickly, John.
Yeah, 2-1 United, not Sunderland.
Right, 3-0 United. I want gold. I think Van Gaal will give him kick up the bollocks after Saturday. Especially to losing Old Trafford, it piled the pressure on for so many youngsters. I think they got to run out, and Tyler Blackett did himself well. And just obviously a mention too, just to make sure we end on a positive note. Phil Jones put a great shift in defence, the back three, and then a back four. And you need to take into account in the second half he's up against what BT Sport describes as one of the fastest wingers in the league, and he did very, very well against them.
Lads, I sit with at Old Trafford when Jesus Christ, not Phil Jones, and he was about to disappear down on that side of him. And the character was a bit like Vidic. He took 2 strides quicker than him, and then took the ball out of play. And I was like, "That well, there you go. He wasn't so bad after all."
Who was that guy? He was absolutely rapid. Phil Jones actually tracked back and made a ridiculous tackle, kind of tracked back and recovered.
He was about 2 strides behind him at one point, and it seemed to catch up with him. According to something I'd seen, he was the only one of 2 United players that did over 20 mile an hour running speed on Saturday, and I can't remember the other one is because he didn't mention it. I don't think I remember rightly, but I'm playing guessing games. It's got to be going to be Januzaj, because Nani didn't get up to any sort of speed at any point. And as William had said on Full-Time Devils' views, which is actually 3 months old, Nani should have been sat in the stands somewhere, or at least now sat in Sporting, on Sporting's bench, possibly.
Yeah.
No, has there been any update before we leave on Lingard's injury? Has there been any update on the knee?
I saw pictures of him coming out of the hospital this afternoon with a brace on and crutches, so he didn't look too blooming good. And I was quite impressed by him. He started quite brightly, although he wasn't in his correct position to be playing. But it was quite nice to see him and Blackett get their debuts under Van Gaal.
Yeah, no, he looked very promising, and Blackett looks really promising, really composed. Some people were saying he had a better game in his debut than Smalling, which is, again, a bit disconcerting for Smalling. But, yeah, no, there were some positives there. We'll be all right. I believe we're seeing your dad on Sunday, Dale.
Yeah, we'll see.
The game.
Yeah. So, look, I'm wrecked. I'm up all day after a hectic weekend. Make sure you subscribe to Stretty News TV. Like this, interact with comments and so on, and subscribe to the lads. John, what's your Twitter name?
At Jonathan Schrager, SHRAGER.
And Ian.
At Ian Patterson MU.
That's right.
ATTERSON, if we're going to be like that.
That's Stretty News then, if you want to follow the whole crew. Thanks for watching. I know it's been late, and hopefully next week we'll be recording on a Sunday and a bit earlier, and hopefully we'll have Serge joining us as well. Anything to say before we leave, lads?
No.
Up the Reds.
Up the Reds. Right. We'll come on when we get back from Sunderland. We'll do one on about 8 o'clock or something.
Yeah, we should look whenever we're all around. Look, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll be back again next week. Come on, you Reds.